Um, yes, it is in America at least. It's a holiday weekend. And so there may be no one here tonight, and that is a-okay. Yeah, people may be driving places. Do it while the gas is still affordable. I'm actually on my plan. So I've got sort of this plan that I'm putting in place to make sure that we are well positioned for the nonsense that's coming. And so we're actually in the process of getting our house ready to sell. And then once we sell the house, I want to buy a. Actually, this is really interesting because I've never owned a new car in my life. Like my most recent car was a 2012 Mazda Protege with like 250,000 miles on it. I've always been like a let's drive it till it dies kind of person. I love an older car. I love knobs. I do not want dashboard displays. I don't want none of that. Anyway, however, I was like, okay, I need a vehicle that will work when there's no gas and there's electricity, or when there's no electricity but there's gas. And I guess with the regenerative braking, if you drive like 5 miles an hour, it doesn't. You can still get to where you need to go, just very slowly. Um, so that's kind of like on my list, but we've got to finish the house selling piece of things first. And then after that, yeah, we want to wrap up kind of like some sportsy things for our son and then move toward the mountains. Because I'm not trying to be in a city for the next pandemic. No, thank you. I'm over it. We're not doing that. So all of the pieces we're putting in place. But yeah, it's really interesting looking at the news and going, okay, all right, am I within the time frame I'm talking about? And I think yes. And actually, I think some people are thinking that around July 4th maybe is when the things go wide in terms of like World War III. I mean, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is before October. But sure, why not? July, sure, maybe. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about what happens when abusers recognize that they were abusive. And obviously it's not going to be kind of like a blanket explanation, because honestly it's going to depend on like their level of self-awareness and also your level of contact. So from what I've seen, you might have a person like an abuser or someone that you loved very much. And if you have minimal contact, like you've gone no contact or you have minimal contact, like they're not in your life really at all in any way, shape, or form whatsoever, that may be a person who indicates, oh, yeah, I know I treated you badly. They may not say abuse, but like when my abusive ex acknowledged at least a piece of it, he said, I regret that I was so ugly to you. I regret that I was ugly. And so, even if he is not able to use the word abuse for himself or accept that this wasn't just an ugly toward an incident, but just like broadly in the relationship, there was something, there was some level of awareness there. And so, I feel like people are more likely to have those kinds of experiences when you don't really have any contact with the abuser and some time has passed. Now, when you have regular contact with the abuser, let's say it's a family member, um, they might, if they do recognize that they were abusive, they're gonna not be as magnanimous about it, and accommodating to your perspective. In my experience, they're gonna maybe be angry or resentful. They're gonna think maybe that you caused it. I know my dad, he raised us as a single parent, like in the 80s when no dudes were doing it. Children usually went with the moms at that point. And so he was so mad. He was like, "Ah, I should have let you guys, go into foster care." I guess he was upset that he tried to do the right thing and that it's still, from our perspective, was like, "Oh no, you failed." So he didn't like that. And so I feel like if you see the abuser on a regular, semi-regular basis, that they don't are not going to have that space to accept what they did in a way that feels at all like any kind of remorse, is what I would say. If you have a lot of contact with the abuser, they are absolutely usually gonna maintain that they did not abuse you, because there there's no space for them to, like, have that transition where they can look back and say, "In the past, I was abusive." It's a present experience, and so people in the present aren't usually saying, "I am presently being abusive." Even when I see, people that are clearly being abusive. So, like, for example, when I was going to the AA meetings with my dad and the guys were talking, not guys, but, well, a lot. When the people were talking about the things that they'd done, they they were more focused on, "Well, I need to forgive myself because the other person is never gonna forgive me for what I've done." So, they wanted the weight of what they had done to be lifted, and, felt oppressed by another person making them feel guilty. So, it's sort of been interesting to see. I think that the more space that there is, the more of an ability they will allow themselves to have to, like, acknowledge and recognize, hold on, let me fix this, that they were abusive, but only because they can put it in context of it being the past. So, yeah, very rarely are you gonna see somebody in the present being like, "I'm abusive in the present." And unless they're, I will say there's often a catharsis moment. The catharsis moment is when they're trying to get you to come back and they're like, "Oh, I was abusive, or I'm being abusive and I'm so sorry. You don't deserve this. Please come back, blah, blah, blah." So, I will say if they're having a catharsis, which is always temporary, like, don't think that's real. If they're having a catharsis moment, they may admit to it in the moment, but then later on, especially if you go back, they're gonna resent that they even had to admit that. So it's a trap. It's a trap, 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 trap. Um, yeah, it's whenever we're looking at, like, abuse and abuse dynamics, you're really looking at, like, how does this person see themselves? How can they tolerate emotionally thinking about themselves in a way that makes them the bad person? And a lot of the time, the reason they're abusing is because they're not able to do that. So, oh, another trap too. When you, okay. So I was talking with a victim this week, and she was explaining, I finally got to the point, I think I'm ready to leave. Like, how did you know when you finally were able to leave and let go? And I basically explained, oh, I literally got to the point where I didn't wanna exist. And of course, I was a mom, so I can't, that's not doable, that's not possible. I was like, "We've reached the point where I, like, cannot function, and I don't wanna be here, and that's unacceptable." I have a child that I brought into the world, and I'm responsible for and too, and so this and no further, I guess. When I finally got to that point. I was just so absolutely exhausted, like, within my soul. So, she was explaining, like, she thinks she's ready to leave, but she's afraid she's gonna go back, which is fair. Very normal and a reasonable thing to be worried about, possible expectation. So, I said, "Okay, here's the thing about leaving that I don't know that anyone really tells people. It's that once you leave, you finally get space to breathe. Your nervous system has a chance to, like, calm down, and you get to just exist and not be in fight or flight all the time. Your stress comes down, and so you start to feel better. And sometimes when you start to feel better and that immediate pain that the abuser is causing, or the exhaustion or whatever, you start to feel a little bit better and you think, "Oh, we could make this work. I've learned things, or they've learned things. Surely we can get back together and we can be successful this time. We can be successful, in this relationship dynamic, whether it's your partner, your parent, a friend, whoever." Um, and that is not what happens. Um, if you learn something, and I'm speaking from the abuser's perspective here, it takes years to put these new practices in place, because the reason they're abusing is because of the way they think. You don't learn a piece of information and then completely change the way you think. That takes time. Just like it takes time for a victim to recognize, "Oh, I'm in this situation and I'm being abused and it's not my fault and I need to get out." This is often like an incremental process that the victim is going on. No one can just tell the victim, "You're being abused," and they go, "Oh, well, you know what? Okay, I'm out," right? Because at that point, there's been so much mind games around like the violence they're experiencing and how they think they deserve it. And so it doesn't switch a flip. No, it doesn't flip a switch for the victim. And therefore, it doesn't flip a switch for the abuser. It doesn't matter what they say with their mouths in that moment when they feel possibly remorseful. It's usually because they're having to face, they wanted you to feel bad, but they didn't want you to leave. They still want you to, they still want to have access to you. They still want you to be around and do what they want, but they want you to be in that down position. So you'll do whatever they want and you won't complain and you won't be a person and you'll just enact, the things they want you to do. So yeah, your the level of self-awareness that someone has, they do sometimes intermittently, like selectively activate it for the purposes of getting you back, not for the purposes of actual change, because the actual change would have to come in their mind and the ways that they think. And I've mentioned this on other videos before, but I've got like a 10-point rubric of the ways that abusers think that pretty much explain like the entitlement that's driving the abuse behaviors. So you just telling them you're being abusive, even if they say in the moment, "I'm having a catharsis. Oh, I didn't realize I was abusive. And like maybe it's my childhood trauma," whatever little reason, excuse, something they come up with. Um, it doesn't mean that they're different, because you have to change how you think, and that takes time. So, just as it takes time for a victim to leave an abuse dynamic or recognize the abuser as an abuser, it takes time, if it's going to happen, for the abuser to acknowledge that they've been abusive and to change who they are, essentially. And they would be a completely different person. So, when you, hey, what's up? How is your well, I hope you're about to have like a really great weekend. Um yeah. In the United States, we've got the Memorial Day weekend. And we finally, the pool is open and it's gonna be like rainy. So I don't love it. So anyway, the process of letting go of the abuser for the victim is often gonna be a process of recognizing, oh, even if this person stopped abusing, in order for them to stop abusing, they'd have to be a different person. And they're holding on to the person because they want that person. And no, 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 not at all. Should be great, especially if the weather holds. Northern Michigan summers are dreamy. Oh, that's gonna be nice. That's gonna be nice. I'm in North Carolina. So when you're in the trees, it's lovely. But when we cut down all the trees, it's garbage and it sucks. But that's fine. Um, let's see. No, no, I was just talking about, well, one, um, how do abusers handle whether or not they recognize they've been abusive? And so I went through sort of some of those. And then I was talking about like the trap the victim can fall into when they're thinking, "Oh, I've gotten space from the abuser, and now I've thought about it and I feel better and my nervous system is in a wreck. And also, maybe we could make it work. Maybe we just need to try harder. And maybe we should go to therapy." Which, I mean, I'm assuming anyone who follows my channel knows you do not go to therapy with an abuser. Um, I'm just putting it out there though for anybody new. Um, Going to therapy with an abuser just gives the abuser new ways to abuse you using therapy concepts in the construct of the therapy system. Many therapists are not going to catch it, because the point of therapy with a regular relationship issue is to kind of both sides it and have everybody take each other's perspective. And the abuser will use that process to make you take their perspective. And so it won't be a situation, usually, I'm not saying never, but it generally is not going to be a situation where the therapist is like, "Oh, you're wrong. You're an abuser." They may, however, pull the victim aside and let them know, but that's always a gamble because sometimes if you're a victim and you don't want to hear it, that's not information you want and it's very uncomfortable and everyone may stop going to therapy. So, yeah. Plus, anything that you reveal in therapy also is now free game for you to hear about forever till the end of days, as long as you're with this person. So therapy is not recommended, or there is not recommended for victims to go to therapy. Independent therapy seems to bring yes. Yes, yes, yes. And I gotta say, for any, I don't know if anybody Christian was watching, pastor stuff too. Pastor stuff too. You do not go to a regular pastor person to talk about abuse dynamics. I will say my personal pastor is great, but a lot of pastors are going to give you the wrong information because they do not understand how to handle that. So you do not go to a, like, go if you want to stay in a Christian environment to talk to somebody, go to somebody who understands abuse. There are websites like Christian abuse websites. You do not just taking a gamble on your regular pastor. Don't do it. Don't do it. You can still do that process from a safe perspective. And a normal pastor is often not that. No offense to the pastors. Um, yeah, and I would assume that's the same for like imams. Who else? Usually in like a pagan situation, you got maybe you're in a coven or you've got your like spiritual like group that you meet with. Um and they don't really approach it in a hierarchical way like that. So you're not really gonna have that problem, I don't think. But yeah, if you're in a structure, religious structure, you need to go specifically to an organization or website that handles that and handles it in a way that is, let's say, accurate, scientifically informed. Anyway, yeah. So let me check. I want to see. I had a really good idea earlier and I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget. Mm, passing on information without self awareness. Oh, wait. No, not for this. Oh, okay. So I wrote arguing you into submission to make themselves right, even though they are wrong. The submission makes them feel right. So sometimes when you get an abuser, they know often because you can't really be effective at gaslighting, manipulation, and lying unless you know what the truth is. They often know that they're wrong, but it's enough for them to feel right. And they feel right if you act like they're right or you pretend they're right or you submit in a way that makes it seem as if you think they're right or if they get you to think that they're right, if they can emotionally and psychologically bully you into thinking that they're right even though they're not right, it makes them feel right. And so it's worth doing that to you from their perspective. So sometimes if you run into a person that cannot do the "we agree to disagree" thing, that's often like a red flag. You don't wanna be dealing with. I I mean, there's some things, yes, we all need to agree on, but generally speaking, in a relationship context, a lot of things should not be at that level because you've already, sorted for compatibility. So, yeah. If it's not enough that you to identify that you disagree, but they have to make you think what they think, they have to make you submit and acknowledge that you're wrong. And interestingly, I did learn some of this from my abusive ex because I would be attempting to have a relationship conversation with him under like regular relationship norms. And he would interpret that as me make like insisting that he, admit he's wrong. And I was like, I'm not using this language. Why is he thinking like this? I feel like I don't need him to admit he's wrong. I'm really just asking him to look at things from my perspective. But to him, that meant admitting he was wrong. And so, like, he couldn't even hold the idea of looking at things from my perspective. And I even outright said, "Oh, you don't have to agree, just like, am I making sense? Do you understand?" And you can tell how traumatized I am by it because literally all the time in my videos, I'm like, I'm making sense, right? Like, I hope this makes sense. Talk to you next time. That's all the trauma from me trying to explain things. Um, and now I know, don't do that. Let's see. If they can get you to drop the argument by steamrolling you or throwing the kitchen sink or word salad into theirs, they use the word you like a deflection weapon. Yep. That is, yes, ma'am, correct all day. So, yeah. So he would say like, "Oh, you're trying to make me admit I'm wrong." And being a paralegal, I was like, "No, no, no, no. Admit is very specific. It's a legal idea, and this is not a legal situation. This is a relationship situation. And also, you're not a legal person. So telling me that that's what I'm telling you to do is not even remotely reasonable." He did not like that I was smart and also logical. So I think there's like a group of abusers that like to date people that they think they're smarter than. Um, and that way they can always win the logic arguments and therefore they always feel better about themselves. And so but the problem is they never respect that person. And that person usually isn't as, let's say, accomplished as it would make them feel better to be related to this person. Uh, Whereas if you say to this, beautiful or handsome, smart person that you're with, and you introduce them to people and you're like, "Ah, yes, my spouse, the Dr. So and so." Well, Dr. So and so or lawyer so and so, your smart, beautiful, 10 out of 10 that you thought you wanted is, if they don't agree with you, they're going to be very effective at telling you why. Um, and so they can really, really hate that. So sometimes you'll see abusers date down intellectually so they can do that. Um, or they can make you crazy, like the crazy making behavior, and then you're just not operating from cognition, but the triggered emotions. Yeah, they just make everything worse. If you are not your best self with somebody, it's not the right person. Does not matter how much you love them. And I know I say that a lot, but I talk to so many victims of abuse that are looking for every possible way to stay in the dynamic, but like have the abuser be a completely different person. And it's like, it doesn't, I'm sorry. It's not. Let's see. Oh, I once asked somebody, so I just laid out the argument from your perspective. Oh, I already know where this is going. I just laid out the argument from your perspective, and I can understand that. Can you see things from mine? I got a smirk as a response. Crickets with smirk. Yeah. Yeah. They don't like they don't like they like the idea of dating a smart person. They do not like the reality of it. And they know when they lose. They know when they lose. And also, again, I've mentioned this before, but that shit will live rent free in their head. And I'm here for it. Like, you deserve that, buddy. If they could, they would. If they would, they could, right? Yeah. Oh, you know what I said pomelo. I mentioned to you earlier, Libby, in like today's earlier video, but for some reason I said Libby Pomelo and not Pomevi. So girl, my bad. I meant you though. Um, yeah. So let's see. I've got this guy who's in Belgium. He's like super young. And we're basically trying to transition him out of his abuse dynamic. And it's super interesting. I did not know this. He kept talking about freighter culture. Like, it almost sounded like a cult, kind of, where apparently there are these people that are kind of travelers and they live on their freighters and they go up and down and they freight stuff and they operate cranes and, transport goods, I guess. And so his parents were like two of these people, and they had a couple of kids, but they didn't want the kids to leave. So he's at school and they are like going to crazy lengths to get him to come back. Um, and so he's like, "No, but you don't understand. It's freighter culture." And I asked him, I said, "Well, like, how do you get married? Like, how did they even have kids? Like, at some point, doesn't somebody else have to enter the system or leave the system? Like that, I don't understand how it would be sustaining." And he was like, "Well, usually you have a relationship with another freighter person. So it's this like self-sustaining little enclave. And I was like, I had no idea about this. Thanks. I'm flattered and probably for the best. LOL. Plus, I like that fake name better than this one. No, don't say that. Um, I actually did change my name legally, like almost the whole thing. Because, well, I had multiple reasons, but one of them was because my mom is like a grade A stalker. And I was like, I don't want to live under the shadow of her stalkery. So I'll just like change my name. And so for the first year, I used my new name online until I like changed it legally. And then I got the Gmail account associated with the name, like a boss. And so my brother gave her my email, like my new email. I was like, why am I getting emails from my mom about the will? And he was like, "Oh no, I forgot." And I'm just like, "Okay, did you? Did that happen?" And I mean, I never responded to her, but um, if she knew, she'd be watching this live for sure. Not She used to do stuff like, I mean, it was really impressive at the time, but also horribly scary. So this is before kind of the internet. I mean, the internet was happening, but she got an entire map of the city of San Antonio and she drove around to all of the payphones and she wrote down the numbers and then she plotted them on this map. And then this is like, so she had caller ID on her phone. The boyfriend who did not live with her, thank goodness, who was also lame, he would call and he would say, "Oh, I'm over here and I'm like doing XYZ thing." And she would be like, "Oh, okay, thanks for telling me, blah, blah, blah." And then they get off the phone and she would cross-reference it with her map. And then she wouldn't let him know that she knew he lied. She'd file it away for later. And then, so I don't know, it could be like 3 weeks later, and she'd bring up how she knew he lied when he said he was at this place that he wasn't at. I mean, this is like FBI, CIA level, like for the time and technology. I watched her do it. Just like I'm so impressed and scared right now. So yeah, she would 100%. She would be always about the will, right? Yeah, she really. Yeah, I mean, apparently was very effective on her generation. Not on mine. I'll rather live in my car. No offense to being homeless, but I had already made that decision. I would rather be homeless in a tent than even attempt to deal like with that. She was great. Yeah, she was though. She was. Um, it turned out, so I didn't know this. My dad didn't tell me that my mom was not a stable person and that there were problems there. And so after I got kicked out of foster care, I went to go live with my mom. And all he did was tell me cryptically, like, "Oh, just know you can always come back." And I was like, "I don't, why would you say this?" And then after a month of living with my mom, I was like, "Oh my God." So it turned out that even though my dad was like very physically abusive, that I at least was a sane person because I think I would have been insane if I'd grown up with my mom. So it turned out to be for the best, but that was, I don't know. I don't know. So she actually has like a PhD, 2 PhDs, a master's. She's got like a bunch of degrees. And basically anytime I said I wanted to do something, she'd go and get that degree or she'd like wear my same clothes. There was a lot of BPD going on and yeah, she also is a counselor too. She's like hypnotherapist. Like basically, um, I support therapy and therapists, but also it does attract people, I think, who are either trying to heal themselves or want to be in a position where they're telling other people, like irrigating themselves in a sense. So sorry to the students and also clients, patients, whomever that have her. It's just like, okay. Um, yeah, plus seeing behind the scenes on attorneys and law firms, y'all, there's a reason why I'm like, don't date therapists, don't date attorneys, don't date cops. Sometimes they can't say anything because they don't want to like alienate the child, so they can't say anything negative to children about the other parent. That's true. That's true. But hey, honestly, what I think it is, I think in my parents' minds, Because my mom even said that my dad was the only person she ever really loved, and my dad has essentially said that my mom was the only person he really loved. They genuinely, like, look at each other as if they are the lost loves of each other's lives or something, and they just couldn't be healthy together. Um, so it could be that. It could also be that they genuinely, like, love each other and don't wanna say anything. Oh, spill the tea, yeah. Oh. Oh, you know what is interesting? Um, so I checked in with my ex-husband, who's my child's father, and I just said, just out of curiosity, do you think that we were in an abusive relationship? And he said, well, I think we both made a lot of mistakes and now we're doing better. So it was really interesting. Um, Now, from my perspective, I think it was abusive. I think he was abusive. I think I was struggling with not being abusive with our son because I was under so much stress and pressure, and then he was being low key being abusive with our son. It was a mess, and so I was trying to like, we got to stop this. Um, so I'm not sure if that was deflecting or being very gracious toward both of us. But it was kind of interesting to see sort of what his thought process was. Um, but yeah, we don't have a regular dynamic. I don't think most exes would be able to be like having that conversation or able to like be friendly with each other, especially with that level of past bad history. Um, yeah. And then, oh man, I shouldn't be talking about my mom like this. Watch, she's gonna find this. So she trapped a man into being with her. She did that thing where she was magnetic and charismatic and just, the most incredible, like, manic pixie just she blew this poor man's mind who was just basically like a little dork. I love this man. He's a great man. But he was like a little dork who just like never women had never treated him that way and he just absolutely fell head over heels. And my mother was only able to be that woman for like a month or two, but long enough for them to like get together and for him to be like, "Oh, I want to marry this person." And I asked her about it. I was like, "Okay, but like, you don't. Why are you married? You don't feel that way about him." And she said, "Well, sometimes you have to make the healthy choice." And so they get together. She was like this very independent woman, and then she quit her job. She quit her job to go to school a bunch, and so he ended up, being the main breadwinner, and that was not what he was expecting at all based off, all of the 2 months, I guess. And then so, at some point, she became mayor of, like, a small town in Texas of, like, 2,000 people, and, I just the more distance I have from her, the more ability I have to look on her fondly. Because if I feel like if I were closer, I would be absolutely losing my mind. So yeah, I just sometimes when you're dealing with people, you love them, but you're also like, I can't, this is not gonna work for me. So yeah. All right. So what was it? I was talking to somebody about hoovering. I was talking to a victim of abuse about hoovering. And basically, one of the things that I feel like doesn't really get brought up in conversations about hoovering, and this is like I've been hoovered by parents, by, the relationship people, whomever. It's essentially emotional bait. Like the way it makes sense to me is that, oh, they're going to put something out that triggers an emotional response in you. And then you're going to get back into contact with them. And that could be positive or negative. Sometimes, though, they'll do like logistics, like, oh, I'm just reaching out for logistical purposes. There's also like the birthday, the holiday hoovers. Well, I just wanted to let you know, you I care about you and I hope you're having a wonderful holiday. And you're just like, okay, you are so terrible. Why are you talking to me right now? Um, so the holiday hoover, the birthday hoover, someone died hoover, really just looking for any excuse to like justify contact. And you can also get to a point where you're trying to get back in contact with this abuser because you miss them so much. Like it's a very big mind game sometimes, especially around the holidays. Like if you're not in contact with your parents, it's really hard to watch movies where there's happy families and they're together. having all these wonderful holiday memories. And so you miss your parents, but in reality, you miss what you wish it were. You don't miss the actual parents who are unable to be healthy people and treat you well. Once a random ex from over 10 years ago contacted me because one of our college pals passed away. It was so sad for so many reasons. Oh boy, that was just, they were reaching for that. um, yeah. I had made my abusive ex my emergency contact at my son's school because we didn't have a lot of people. I didn't have a lot of people that I could put on the, and I was like, well, I'll just put him on there. Now, this is when we were dating. This was not like later, but I forgot. So, like, your kid's at the school for 4 years. So I get a call from him one day and he's like, yeah, so I'm really sorry I would normally be calling you, but your son's school called me? And I was like, oh, immediately I knew what had happened. I had completely forgotten I'd put him on the emergency contact. So like change that emergency contact information. don't don't forget that. Accidentally almost hoovered myself. So no, that sucked. Oh, I have mail for you. Let's discuss mail. Or I still have stuff that you left here, but they wouldn't let you get it when you were leaving. But now suddenly, it's so important that they get it to you. Man, it's all about that contact. Yeah, we are not here for that. There was actually, wait a minute. There was a Reddit thing that I wanted to talk about because I read it and I was like, oh, we should talk about this. Give me 1 second. Okay. It was about some sister. Okay. There was a sister and the one sister didn't have kids and worked from home. And so the other sister who had kids and like worked at a job was, I guess, low-key resentful that this other sister wasn't encumbered. And so she decided, well, you know, she has this free life and that's not fair. So I'm just going to like leave my kids with her. So basically emotionally manipulates the sister into taking her kids a bunch. And she would just drop them off. And of course, like absolutely no respect and dropping the kids off. And so finally, the sister with no children basically says, yeah, I literally can't. I've got like something scheduled. And the sister who was using her was very, very angry. Well, I've got this thing and blah, blah, blah. And you should be able to take them. You're not even really working. And it's not even, it's not even real work. It's just kids and stuff. And somebody said in the comments, and it was so good. They said childcare keeps falling through equals the sister doesn't have shit arranged for childcare aside from OOP, and made the point that, oh, it's no work, when it's somebody else watching the kids. But when it's the sister watching the kids, she's like, I'm doing real work. And life is hard because I'm watching all of these children. So that kind of the way they'll shift, abusers in general will just shift how like they don't stay consistent. Is watching children hard or is it not hard? It isn't consistent because really it's about accomplishing an outcome and saying whatever will be effective in order to get it. Yeah, so I just that kind of switch where you're not really, I feel like so many victims of abuse are trying to model the abuser in their mind. And so they think that the abuser has consistent beliefs and ideas. And I don't, that does not often happen. So anyway, let's see. Oh wow, it's been 40 minutes almost. So I think I'm gonna end it here. I hope y'all have a great weekend. And if you're not in the United States, don't mind us. We're just gonna be ridiculous with our Memorial Day weekend as we turn the world into a hot fire mess. Our apologies. All right. I will talk to you guys next time. And it's really great to see everybody. Okay. Bye.